Hello and welcome to Rain's Kitchen and Garden. My name is Rain. Today I'm making very easy, no knead white bread. This is an overnight bread. You start it on day one, leave it in the fridge overnight, and then bake it the next day. It is a little time consuming, but it's so easy. Like the title says, there is no kneading and you get a great result. Let me show you how I make it. The first thing that we're going to do for our overnight no knead white bread is to proof our yeast. In my measuring cup I have 1 3/4 cups of water. That's 425 mils, and I've heated it to about 100 degrees Fahrenheit. That's about 37 degrees Celsius. And I'm going to add some dry active yeast, 1½ teaspoons or 7 grams. Or is that active dry yeast? I always get mixed up when I'm saying active dry or dry active. Now I'm just sprinkling it in. You don't want to just dump it in because it'll make clumps. So just sprinkle it in. And I'm going to just take a fork and mix all of that up. I'm going to let that sit for 10 minutes until it gets nice and foamy. My yeast is nice and foamy, so I'm sure that it's fine. I'm going to set that aside for now, and I've got a large bowl here, and inside my bowl I have all-purpose flour. I have 3½ cups, that's 537 grams of unbleached all-purpose flour, and I have some salt, 2 teaspoons or 16 grams. And I'm just going to whisk that all up together. And I'm going to make a little well in the center. All right, so into that I'm going to add my yeast. Just going to give it a little stir with a rubber spatula and pour it in. Make sure I got everything out there. And I'm going to mix all of that up with my rubber spatula until I get a soft, sticky dough. Well, that's a nice, soft, sticky dough. And if you look at the bottom of the bowl, I don't have any flour left. So it's very nicely incorporated. What I'm going to do is just cover it with some cling film. Okay. And with a tea towel because I want it to be nice and warm. And I'm going to let that rise for 1 hour in a warm spot. Now the warmest spot in my house right now is inside the microwave. So I generally always put my dough inside the microwave so that it will rise properly. Into the microwave it goes for 1 hour. Okay, let's take a look at our dough. It's doubled, that's for sure. It's looking pretty good. Just going to put a little bit of flour on the top, a little flour on my surface here, and I'm going to dump it out. Now, if it sticks, just use a spatula. Get a wet spatula, just dip it in water and use the spatula to take your bread out, okay? And with wet hands, because it's the best way with this dough is to have wet hands so nothing sticks, I'm just punching it down. Get all the air bubbles out of there. Okay? So then what I'm going to do is kind of fold it in 3. Fold it in 3 again, turn it over, and that is it. I've got some light tasting olive oil here that I'm just going to pour a tiny little bit in my bowl, move that around, and put my dough inside the oiled bowl. Okay, and I'm going to turn that around a couple of times so that the oil gets all over it. And I'm going to put my cling film back on top. My hands are very oily right now. So everything's kind of slippy. And my tea towel goes on top as well. And I'm going to put that back into a warm spot so that it will rise for another hour. All right, another hour has passed. So we're going to basically repeat the same process. Look at how that's risen. It's right up to the top of the bowl. So I'm just going to put a little bit of flour down on my work surface so nothing sticks. And I'm going to turn that out and it should plop right out. Yeah, look at that. Oh, it's so big. Look at that bubble. All right, floured hands, punch it down, get all that air out of there. And we're basically going to do the same thing. We're going to fold it in 3, fold it in 3, turn it over, push it down a little, fold it in 3, and then make a little ball. Okay? And then it goes right back into the bowl. If you need more oil, go ahead and put more oil in it, but there should be enough. And then we're going to put the cling film back on. And that goes into the fridge overnight. So this is all we can do for day 1. This is going to sit in the fridge overnight. And if you're in a hurry to make the bread, I've done this. I've started it in the morning and I've left it in the fridge for about 6 hours and I've baked it that night. But there's another 1 hour rising time when we take this out of the fridge, so keep all of that in mind. Well, my dough has been sitting in the fridge overnight and it's looking pretty good. It's doubled in size. Looks great. I'm just going to put that aside for now and I'm going to prepare my baking dish. Now this is a 9-inch round Pyrex baking pan, and if you're wondering, it's 3 inches high, okay, from top to bottom. I find that this pan is perfect for this no-knead bread. I've tried baking this in different size pans, in rectangle pans, square pans, but this is by far my favorite. And I'm sure that if you have a Dutch oven, you could use your Dutch oven. I don't have a Dutch oven, but one day I hope I will. Because the first half of the baking time, we're going to be covering this very tightly with foil, but a Dutch oven will have a top which will work perfectly. But I want to show you, since we are going to be using foil, a little tip, okay? I have 2 pieces of foil here because I need 2, one isn't wide enough. So I'm just doing this. Okay? So now I have the outline of the top of my pan, and when time comes for greasing it, I know where to grease the top of the pan, okay? So that's just a little trick for you, because we are going to have to grease the top so it doesn't stick onto the bread. But I just wanted to show you to do that before you start greasing your pan. Now I'm going to be greasing it with unsalted butter. I've melted this just a little bit so that it's workable. I don't recommend using oil. I'm going to leave it up to you to butter with whatever, or not butter, to grease your pan with whatever you want to grease it with. But I'm just going to tell you, in my experience, when I've used oil, the bread stuck terribly to the pan and I couldn't get it out. I had to chisel it out. It actually baked on to the pan. It wasn't really pleasant, and I kind of ruined my bread that way. So my preferred greasing is using butter. And I'm doing the top as well because the bread will rise in the oven as it's cooking. But we are also going to let this rise one more time before we put it in the oven. Okay, so I've got my dough that I'm just going to plop right in. There we go. Let me move this aside. And I'm putting a little bit of butter on my fingers just so it doesn't stick to my fingers, and I'm just going to push that down. Not too much. And I'm going to put a little bit of butter on the top. because we're going to cover this with cling film, and I don't want anything to stick. It's a lot of butter, but boy, does this taste good. I'm going to leave those air bubbles there. They're going to squish down at some point. There they go. All right, and I've got some cling film all prepared here. Just going to cover that up, and I'm going to put that in a warm spot and let that rise for 1 more hour. My bread is about ready to bake, so I'm just going to butter that foil that's going to be covering the bread, because whenever I make this bread, it does stick to the top of the foil, so I have to make sure that I've got it nice and buttered. There was one time when I made this bread and I forgot to butter the foil, and when I tried to take it off halfway through the baking, it actually pulled the crust off the top of the bread. So I highly recommend that you grease the top of your foil. There we go. You could do this ahead of time and just stick it in the fridge, just so it stays nice and buttered up. Okay? I'll just put it over here. Now look at our bread. It's ready to go. Now before I put the foil on top, I'm just going to take a sharp knife and I'm going to cut a few slits into the bread. I had actually a kitchen razor that I purchased after I started making my baguettes, and I've searched high and low and I cannot find it, and I'm very upset. I'm gonna have to get another one. So I'm just gonna put the foil on top and seal that really well. Now this baking pan, this round baking glass pan, does come with a top, but the problem is the bread is going to rise during the baking, and the top will it'll just stick to the top. That's why I'm sealing it really tightly with foil. So that's ready to go into my preheated oven that I preheated to 500 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 260 Celsius or gas mark 10. Now with my oven, I have an old wonky oven. I've put a thermometer in there. It never really gets up to 500. You really want to try to get it as high as you can get it, and I've set it for 500, but it doesn't mean it's going to hit 500. So basically I have a pizza stone in my oven all of the time, and the pizza stone in the oven helps to add more heat to the oven. So whatever temperature it reaches, the highest that it gets, usually it's only around 475. But I'm going to bake this for 25 minutes at, hoping, 500 degrees Fahrenheit. And at the 25-minute mark, I'm going to take this out, remove the foil, and put it back into the oven. Okay, we're at the halfway mark of the baking time. So what I've done is I've turned my oven down to 450 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 230 degrees Celsius or gas mark 8. And I'm going to very carefully take the foil off of my pan. Now it's going to be hot. Please be careful of your fingers, and there might be some steam that comes out. Really, really be careful. I mean, my hands are used to hot, so I'm okay with this, but you don't want to burn your fingers. All right, so that's what it looks like right now, and I'm going to put it back into the oven for 25 more minutes until it's a deep golden brown. If it takes longer, it takes longer, but usually between 25 and 30 minutes, you should be good. My bread is ready. Look at how beautiful it looks. Isn't that gorgeous? I can't wait to try some of this. I'm basically going to let it sit in the pan on my wire rack, and I'm going to let that cool completely before I take it out and try it. I wanted to show you how easy it is if you butter your dish for the bread to pop out. Look at that. It just pops right out, and it's so nicely baked. This is such a nice bread. Look at this. I'm going to cut it open for you so you can see what it looks like in the middle. Now this bread is best eaten within 2 to 3 days. But if you can't eat the whole thing, what I usually do is I cut it in half and I freeze half of it. It freezes very, very well. Look at that. No knead bread. Doesn't that look delicious? I think that looks amazing. I hope you enjoyed this video today, my friends, and if you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, and please leave me a comment. I love reading your comments and I do reply to them. I'll see you next time on Rain's Kitchen and Garden. Thanks again for watching. Bye.